Hi everyone. Hi Paris. My name is Andrea Tešanović. I am coming from Aalborg University in Denmark, and today I will be presenting you my paper, Cyberfeminism Index, NA's Archive of Cyberfeminist Art and Culture. To just quickly touch upon the title itself, I was giggling when I realized that indeed all archives, and especially archives of new media art, are actually like a Noah's Ark, where we need to future-proof them because they, in fact, are serving as a bridge in between the past, present, and the future. And it is a very responsible role of deciding what goes there and how sure are we making that the content is safe in the archive. I was inspired by this quote from Ursula K. Le Guin, the American sci-fi author, who in her story carrier bag theory of fiction posits that the first tool was the basket rather than the spear. And this idea reshapes the history of technology as one of gathering and sharing rather than hunting and dominating. And there's a certain sentiment to this idea of gathering that might prompt us to ask, what are we collecting and for whom? Sort of slowing down and conceptualizing this act. And then I was also inspired by this question of, are archives portals or containers, that I stumbled upon somewhere. And I kind of realized that they're both, that these items in the archives come together to create a certain world. And as much as an archive holds material, it also serves to transport you into this world. So there is an element of storytelling to the archive, of course. So I found a very interesting example of a future-proof, or at least it seems so, but needs to be put to the test of time, new media archive, which is the Cyberfeminism Index. And let me begin by explaining briefly what is cyberfeminism. So when the internet was born in the early 90s, of course it was born before as an idea, but it was more democratized in the early 90s. The term cyberfeminism was coined the same year, simultaneously, by the British philosopher Sadie Plant and the Australian art collective ENS Matrix, coincidentally. And it has a very nebulous history, described as anti-genealogical, anti-authorial, hostile mucus, never faithful to any origins. And Leonardo, MIT's art journal, published in 1998, that the question of cyberfeminism is not one of dominance and control or of submission and surrender to machines, but instead it is one of exploring alliances, affinities, and co-evolutionary possibilities between women and technology. Cyberfeminism is not just about women or female artists, but they have been trailblazing in the early 90s by making interactive CD-ROMs, built web-based multimedia artworks, and tinkered with early VR modeling languages. They also made video games and a lot of different new media forms. And they choose to define cyberfeminism by what it is not, rather than by what it is. And this is the first page of the website of Old Boys Network, which is one of the most iconic cyberfeminist art collectives. And then I was delving more into research in the field of new media archiving, coming across several problems, such as that archives are usually representing the Western art history canon, probably based on funding and different politics that are biased, like any politic is, in a way. Then the digital archives are curated in hermetic groups, is not a collaborative open source politic very often, which of course comes with a reason, because that can become hectic. Then a problem that new media art is generally facing, and especially when it comes to archiving, and it's that software, hardware, and operating systems are becoming obsolete. And there's this innate inability of new media art to adapt to age. And then a lot of unsustainable strategies like centralizing the power of the archive, the top-down hierarchy, and the complicated database structures. Cyberfeminism Index had all of these in mind, when creating a framework facilitated by Mindy Su, a designer in New York, who insists on being called facilitator rather than curator or anything other than that, because she believes that she's only opening the space and creating a platform and maintaining it for all these artworks and collaborators to create this world that we were also referring to. It's an open source, open access, crowdsourced database documenting the development of cyberfeminism. So spanning 30 years back from 90s up to today, because it still didn't die, even though it has changed form, cyberfeminist art, with an emphasis on intersectional and non-Western definitions and practices. It's a format of an index with hyperlinks, with an option to download a PDF of all these digital objects. And it's based on a wiki model, so it's most similar to that, with editors and contributors. And it's a radical non-linear organization with a feminist hierarchy, which is collective and citational. It is divided into yak and hack, which is theory and practice. And it's proudly incomplete and always in progress, really emphasizing the aliveness, but also accessibility. The facilitator claims that accessibility is durability, actually. And it's also based on default web elements and system fonts. But in order to even additionally, technically, future-proof the website, the least possible amount of extra tech was used, such as Java for client-side and Python for server-side. So there's no databases, no libraries or plugins. It is relying on hyperlinks. And the longevity will depend on its collaborative editing and compilation. It's about feedback and redefining hierarchy and inclusivity, decentralizing power. This is how it looks, more or less. And it's very much alive when you go to the website, and I encourage you to do that. And then you can open all of these links into additional hyperlinks. Some of them are leading you to a web page. Some of them are, for example, if the hyperlink is dead, then they will provide a screenshot from the Wayback Machine. And it's all based on this quote by the new media artist Olia Lialina: "All you need is a link." I had several research questions that really pushed this research, and it was, the first one is, what is a curatorial / archival politic? Who is the Noah of this arc, and how collaborative really it is? And then in relation to that question, I was thinking about what is the financing model and what is the stakeholders matrix. And actually the index was purchased by Rhizome. So, and there's a lot of other donors. So it's a very interesting kind of stakeholder matrix, but it didn't really answer my questions on the curatorial politic, because it's very versatile sort of income. And then I was focusing on something that challenged me more, and that is the technical durability and the challenges of an index that is relying on hyperlinks. And there is very interesting findings and potential future research that can be built upon this one, but you would have to read my paper to get that info. And then I was thinking about what can this archive teach us about contemporary forms of organization, and some new questions that can only be answered by letting this archive go through a test of time, and which are still interesting for me, is how this content will evolve. Are hyperlinks really future-proof? And how do you cope with the constant obsolescence of different sites, of different formats, etc., etc.? And then how the space is negotiated, really, like what ends up on Noah's archive, which is Cyberfeminism Index, how time is perceived when you have 30 years span in a non-linear hierarchy, in a framework where years are being mixed together in order to break the hegemony. How do we actually approach this archive in a time context, and how this heritage is eventually performed? So how everything coming together, the technical side, the curatorial politic, the non-linearity, the open source context, how is all that performing? That would be my timer. Thank you very much for listening, and I hope you got interested enough to read my paper. And please, if there's any questions, you can either contact me on my email or we'll find a way. Thank you.